sometimes there are things that I don't want to know. Let me take you on the journey that I went on with my husband the other night, which ended with me at 1 a.m. texting my friend and business partner to never use Bluetooth in their car. This journey started with my husband and I talking about Shane Tamura. This was the alleged perpetrator of the incident that happened in Manhattan and how allegedly this person had suffered CTE. CTE was known to be a really big risk when playing football, and how the NFL intentionally suppressed that information about CTE and how much of a risk it was, right? And I was talking about this with my husband and I was like, you know what? One of my favorite studies ever talks about this. This is Targeted Strategies to Manufacture Doubt with Detrimental Effects on Environmental and Public Health. And it covers a number of different industries that used 28 specific tactics to downplay the risks and manufacture doubt about how bad their products actually were. They looked at groups like the tobacco industry, the coal industry, the sugar industries, manufacturers of the pesticide atrazine, as well as the Marshall Institute, okay? That institute focused on downplaying the risks of climate change. I really should spend 10 minutes alone just talking about the study, but for the purposes of this video, the next thing I did was, which is one of my favorite things to do, which is to look a study up in Google Scholar and then see, okay, who references this study in their research. And again, I encourage people to do this as well. It's a really fun thing to do. So this is my favorite study. And as you can see, it was cited by 66 different papers. So if you click on that, it's going to show you all of the other academic papers that cite this one. And so this is always really fascinating, right? Especially with this one. So of the 66 citations, they're all really far reaching on different topics. So this one is a thematic analysis of disinformation and gender affirming healthcare bans in the US. Fascinating. There's one all about the opioid epidemic and, of course, how pharmaceutical companies used those same propaganda tactics to downplay the risks of opioids. Okay. However, it was this one that caught my eye: cell phone use and risk of tumors, systematic review and meta-analysis. Oh boy. Of course, I had to click on it. This is when I started learning things I didn't want to know. Investigated whether cell phone use was associated with increased risk of tumors using a meta-analysis of case-controlled studies. And yes, what did they find? In a subgroup meta-analysis by this research group, there was a statistically significant positive association. Yeah, that's not good. And so they found that there was a statistically significant association with brain tumors, essentially, when there was a cumulative call time of more than 1,000 hours of holding a phone to your head. There was a significantly increased risk of tumors. That's not good. And then it gets worse. So this comes out to about 17 minutes per day, right, of holding the phone next to your head. This comprehensive meta-analysis of case-controlled studies found evidence that linked cell phone use to increased tumor risk. But it gets so much worse. Okay, and so then, of course, I went further and I looked to see how many studies referenced that one, right? So used that meta-analysis as a citation for future studies, okay? And again, this can also be a mark of how reliable a study is. If it has like no citations and it's been out for a few years, it's probably not going to be a valid source of information. That one had 82 citations, okay? So 82 more recent studies have cited that one. And this is a systematic review on RF EMF exposure, basically using cell phones and cancer risk by Karapidis et al. Has serious flaws that undermine the validity of the study's conclusion. And I'm like, what was that? Well, guess what? Basically, the World Health Organization, they commissioned a huge, basically big review study to finally establish whether or not using cell phones increased your risk of brain tumors. They employed Karapidis in order to do that study so they could finally maybe put this controversy about cell phones and cancer to bed. Well, it turns out that this guy was basically employed by the telecommunications company, allegedly, to downplay the risks of brain cancer and cell phones. And I found not one, but two big academic papers written by many scientists that grouped together to fight against the World Health Organization and say, dude, this guy is working for the telecommunications company and is saying that there's no risk, because that was the World Health Organization's finding, right? That there was not really a risk of brain tumors and using cell phones, holding it against your head. And they said that was BS, and that there's tons of studies showing risk. And this guy, Karapidis, the guy that was hired by the World Health Organization, well, he was a telecommunications plant, and he was just being paid by them to say that it was totally safe. Just like I said in The Science of Spin, the original study, right, that I started this whole thing with. Basically, they're saying that he was put there to manufacture doubt about the risks, but no, it is actually bad. This one is nuts. And basically there's five key points that they use to show how the World Health Organization's assessment saying that using cell phones does not increase your risk of tumors, how that was wrong. They have 5 points. And there's another one of these studies done by a different group of researchers and scientists who basically are saying that the World Health Organization is not acknowledging the risks of using cell phones and how they can cause cancer.